I'm going to say something eminently sensible about fringe theatre making at places like the Edinburgh Fringe and other fringe festivals. And then I'm going to say something that actually sounds a bit not very sensible, but I think it's the more sensible one of the two things I'm going to say. So what I'm focusing on here is the first minute of your show, and let's take the case of the Edinburgh Fringe. The first minute of your show in a fringe venue at something like the Edinburgh Fringe, where there might be a dozen, if not half a dozen shows happening in your venue alone with very quick turnarounds and audiences rushing from venue to see different shows and pack them all in, because they might only be in Edinburgh for a day or two given the cost of accommodation and travel, is that first minute may not be like the first minute of your beautifully ushered show back home or on tour, where the show started on time, the audience quietened down, the lights went down, and we had the perfect beginning, which was that the first minute was taken in entirely by pretty much everybody in the audience, except the usual ones who, despite being told to turn off their smartphones, were watching the last bit of a TikTok, or mostly sending that final text or WhatsApp message, and then had finally turned it off 1 minute into the show, which is right at the heart of what I'm talking about, in that you don't, even in an ordinary theatre, get 100% attention, just as, and here's the kind of paradox really, it's often just like when people subconsciously judge, unless they're really self-aware, somebody as they walk into a room. Can be by the way they walk in, it can be the view on their face, what they're wearing. There can be all kinds of biases of judgment towards people, but we take in the first couple of minutes sometimes more than we take in, say, the 20th minute, and sometimes judgment's already been formed. And so the problem there is, if the first minute is a bit of a disaster, there's noise and people can't really hear it, they've lost the opening minute. And if the opening minute was critical to the narrative, we have a problem of audiences already running to catch up or having given up. So the 1 minute, of course, is a notional 1 minute. It might be the first 5 minutes. But I think the risk there is higher in fringe festivals because it happens more often. Audiences are being let in up to 5 minutes in, even when there might be a very, very clear rule that the company or the venue says, which is if you're late, you don't get in, or in most cases we find a quiet moment that's been agreed and you can sneak in during that time. That tends to break down a lot because of that packed schedule, ushers quite often not always being as briefed as well as they can, not always being able to stand up to people who are a minute late and want to get in. So what we can get is noise, a lot of noise in that first minute. People are looking up to see who's making that noise at the back. People are tutting at the people that are talking and whispering as they sort of just came from another show, and people are opening their crisps. All of this, I think, happens more in pop-up venues at the Fringe. As I say, that's not to criticise all venues, some people get this really right, but we go around and review and we often see people coming in. It can happen not just with theatre, it can happen with stand-ups who are doing their opening line, saying hello, and it might be quite a quieter show. It might be that that performer is not trying to work the room, it is actually just beginning their material. It might be some storytelling, but the danger is all kinds of stuff like it is particularly noise bleed, it is particularly the noise of people sitting down late, it is people just still in their heads of having come from another show, and that first minute can be lost and it can affect the engagement of some members of the audience. As I say, they try and catch up. So that's sensible, and the sensible thing of course is to try to get all of that stuff sorted, to really make sure the ushering is tight, to make sure perhaps that you have to notice that if everybody really does need to get the first 2 minutes, that you might block that to really be in the faces of the audience. It might be that what you do is you reblock it slightly to have certain lines louder, more prominent. I've certainly seen that in plays before where it's just kind of bigged up and then it settles a bit, but the sort of risk of it going wrong, that people don't get it from the start, can be just adapted slightly for a different venue. So what you don't always want is the audience trying to work out what's going on in the first 2 minutes if we've got a situation where they're also trying to work out what that noise is at the back. And of course the biggest disruptor when people are late is when they start shuffling along rows, they're apologising, you can't even see what's going on stage. Where you've got a little bit of time and you're noticing a lot of people are coming in late, that's when you need really good communication between ushers, tech, the people backstage, the producer that's there to say, just hold this for 2 minutes. There's always that little bit of leeway. And it could well be that a bunch of people are coming in late, not because of their own fault, but a show, perhaps in the same venue, finished a bit late. And all of that communication needs to take place. But your show deserves not to be ruined by the first couple of minutes where, if it is the case, people need to get it, that people don't for all those reasons. So the sensible thing is, get this right, have a plan B, be slightly flexible with your timing, make sure the ushering really works, make sure that when people come in late there is a shush going on before they even come in, that they are ushered not into the third row but to the back row if there are spare seats. It's all, I think, about skillful ushering and those decisions. But perhaps the weird thing is just to be very realistic about this too, and these are things I picked up over the years, where the writer might give permission for the really critical bit of the play to be repeated, and it may well be, if it's lost in the first minute, there's a way of shoehorning it in or being really eloquent with it, so that if it's really key that you're introducing a character, that you're introducing something that happened, is that instead of it happening in the first minute, it could be happening more punchier in the 5th minute when everyone's sat down. Or it could be that there's a form of echo or repetition for it, maybe 3 or 4 minutes in. And it may even be that you might write a recap into somebody's scene. So this is where we are. Certainly that's happened, I've seen, with mystery theatre, where there's a kind of plot, where there's a tight plot to unfold. And if it's lost in the first minute, everyone's going to be going, what's going on? And so the delaying of it till later, the repetition of it, the making it more prominent, the introducing it in a form of a summary or a recap, are all ways to ensure that the first minute isn't lost, and that if it is critical, and this is kind of a key thing in, I think it used to be called Pareto analysis when I was at college, which is where 1 minute or one bit of a problem, the tiniest bit, could be responsible for all of the effects later. Sometimes I think it's been called the butterfly effect, or the tiniest cause can have the biggest effect. And I think that happens in drama, and it happens in narrative, and it particularly happens in Fringe. So I would encourage you, if you're the director, the producer, the team, is just to sit down and imagine the disruptions that can take place. Certainly imagine 5 minutes of an hour run can have people coming in late, there's disruption, the play might have to start, your stand-up routine starts, but you're competing with people not on stage. And what you don't want is for people to get confused or lost. If it's really, really critical, they get it right at the start. I think this is part of the stagecraft that can be unique to noisy, busy Fringe festivals. And I think to be prepared in this case is well worth it. And to have realistic conversations, and even to get back to the script or the rehearsal room to make sure that disaster doesn't strike if you don't plan for it. It might well do so.